Chapter 6, Integumentary System. This chapter will cover the epidermis layers and the characteristics for those layers, then melanocytes and the connection to melanoma. Then we'll cover the dermis layers, then hair, nails, skin glands, two or more types of tissues that have come together make up an organ. And skin is made up of more than one type of tissue, therefore skin is an organ, and it's the largest organ in our body. Skin is also called the cutaneous membrane. Skin and also these helping structures, accessory structures, including the hair, nails, glands, sensory receptors, together make up the integumentary system. First, we'll cover the skin and the three layers that make it up: the epidermis, dermis, and the hypodermis. The epidermis is the outermost layer, or the more superficial layer. It's made up of stratified squamous tissue. The base membrane, which means at the bottom of the stratified squamous, is then connecting the stratified squamous to the dermis layer. The dermis is the middle layer. Know that this layer includes the areolar and the dense irregular tissues. The dermis, because it's made up of connective tissue, it has a bunch of collagen and elastic fibers. Hypodermis, the deepest layer of our skin. This is beneath the dermis. Some consider it to be not part of skin, but here we'll note as it containing areolar and adipose tissue. So it's a lot of fat, but some connective tissue. It does have blood vessels that supply the skin. Here's a picture of the skin showing the different layers and the different structures that are found. We'll go through epidermis. Again, it's made up of the stratified squamous tissue. Here, the epidermis, just like with epithelial tissues, it lacks blood vessels. In its deepest layer, which is called a stratum basale, this layer does have blood vessels that are coming to it through the dermis, and so it does get some nourishment through these blood vessels. Also, with this stratum basale, this deepest layer, cells are dividing, and after they divide, they grow, and as they grow, they migrate towards the free surface or the upper surface, away from nutrient supply. As they grow up towards the top, these cells become older, and as they get older and older, and then finally they die, and they flatten as they begin to die. In the epidermis layer, occurring in the stratum granulosum, keratinization occurs. Keratinization just means process of hardening, dehydration, but it really means when these cells make keratin. So keratinization is really called keratin accumulation. And this keratin that they make is really just a tough, fibrous, waterproof protein that makes these skin cells strong and waterproof. The different layers of the epidermis. The corneum, stratum corneum, is the outermost layer. Here, these cells are dead, keratinized cells. Below that, if this is in thick skin, you would see the stratum lucidum. So know that this is found only in thick skin, meaning the palms and the soles of our feet. Stratum granulosum, this is the layer where keratinization occurs, meaning where the cells, these keratinocytes, make keratin. Stratum spinosum, nothing really that specific about this layer. It's just that here the cells have this shape, appear spiny. The deepest layer is stratum basale, or the germinativum layer. This is the deepest layer. That's the mitotic layer, meaning here new cells are being made. And at the bottom it talks about the function of the epidermis, how the epidermis protects against water loss, harmful chemicals, mechanical injury, and pathogens. Also in the epidermis, in the deepest part layer, or the stratum basale layer, there are melanocytes in addition to keratinocytes. Melanocytes, these produce a pigment called melanin. So melanin is really just a protein. A pigment means a protein that reflects color. So here, this melanin, it absorbs UV light from the sunlight to protect our DNA that's in the keratinocytes from mutating from the UV light. But also melanin gives our skin color. And so once the melanin is made in the melanocytes, melanin is then distributed or sent to the inside of the keratinocytes. Then within the keratinocytes, melanin sits on top of the nucleus of the keratinocytes to protect the DNA from the UV light. A little bit about skin cancer here. Exposure to sunlight or a tanning bed can cause melanocytes to produce more melanin and the skin darkens. However, melanocytes can go through mutation in their DNA caused by this UV rays. Tanning beds, it says here, those use very strong doses of UV radiation that can actually increase the chance of skin cancer. There are different types of skin cancer: basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma. These arise from the epithelial cells in the skin. However, these types of cancer cells do not spread outside of the skin, meaning they do not go into the blood vessels. However, melanoma means mutation or cancer of melanocytes. These cancerous melanocytes are able to spread to the other parts of our body by going inside blood vessels or lymph vessels. And so melanoma is highly metastatic. Malignant. It is not benign. Therefore, melanomas, even though they're the least common type of skin cancer, they cause 80% of the skin cancer deaths. Next, we'll cover the dermis, which is the middle layer of our skin. The dermis has these dermal papillae, which are the curves that you see in between the epidermis and the dermis. These are indentations. More importantly, know that the dermis is made up of areolar and dense irregular tissues. Areolar tissue is right below the epidermis, then the dense irregular makes up about 80% of the dermis layer. The dermis contains cell processes, nerve fibers. It has a bunch of blood vessels to supply nutrients. Then we're going to see how it has the hair follicles. We'll talk about the characteristics. And there are also sweat, sebaceous glands. And a bunch of these special receptors that pick up on pressure, touch information. Here this is talking about the two layers of the dermis, papillary and the reticular. Papillary is made up of the areolar tissue. So this is the more superficial part, and then the reticular is the dense irregular tissue. Next, we'll talk about these accessory structures of the skin, which are the hair follicles, nails, and the glands. First, the nails. So these are protective coverings on the ends of our fingers and toes. But know that nails are really just an extension of the epidermis. So they're not bone, they're actually a type of a skin cell. But here, these cells have a stronger type of keratin. The different parts of a nail, these will not be on the exam, but it's just talking about here how the nail plate is on the nail bed. Nail bed is the surface of the skin under the nail plate. Lunula is at the base of the nail plate where the cells are being made. Next, the hair follicle. Hair follicle means the region of epidermal cells inside of the skin from which hair develops. Hair papilla is at the bottom part. This has the blood vessels to nourish the hair. Hair color is due to melanin. Attached to the hair follicle are these very, very small, smooth muscles called the erector pili. These muscles, when they contract, when they're activated, by the sympathetic nervous system, they cause goosebumps. And so erector pili is the goosebump muscle. For hair loss, most common type of baldness, says it's pattern baldness. Here it means that the top of the head loses hair. This is due to lowered level of testosterone in men or lower estrogen in women. Alopecia areata, this is not related to hormone level, but here instead, it's an autoimmune disorder. We don't understand why, but in people who have this, they produce antibodies that attack the hair follicles. So this is autoimmune hair loss. And this can start at a younger age.